Well, for more reaction, here's Tzvi Fleischer, the editor of the Australia-Israel Review, and Tzvi joins us from Melbourne. Welcome. So we heard there from Bassab Dali of the Australia Advocacy Network. He describes this as a black day for democracy. What's your response?
I think that's very exaggerated. I think that while this legislation has been a little controversial, it doesn't really change Israeli law in a substantive way in much at all. Most of what it does is it says Hebrew is the national language. It says they use the Hebrew calendar. It says Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. These are all things that are already in existence in Israeli law at the moment. All it's done is put them into a basic law, which makes them have a more constitutional basis rather than just be in regular legislation. So there isn't really much change here. Israel's been defined as a Jewish state since its Declaration of Independence. This really just codifies what that means, and it doesn't really have any effect on the rights of the minorities in Israel. That's protected by a different basic law, the Basic Law Human Dignity and Liberty, which was passed in 1992.
But doesn't this go completely against Israel's 1948 Declaration of Independence, which ensured, quote, complete equality of social and political rights for all inhabitants, no matter their religion, race, or sex?
No, actually it doesn't. I think that that's exactly incorrect, because, as I said, the Declaration also says it's a Jewish state. This says this is a Jewish state. This does not contradict the Basic Law or supersede the Basic Law of Human Dignity and Liberty, which specifically refers to those protections. So there are two basic laws. One says Israel's a Jewish state, and one says, under the second basic law, which is the older one, says, and that also says Israel's a Jewish state, by the way. That was from 1992. That also says that the Declaration of Independence protections for all peoples based on race, religion, etc., continue to apply. That still applies. All this does is, like I said, it codifies that Israel's things that are already in legislation, the holidays, like in Australia, Christmas is a holiday, in Israel, Jewish holidays are holidays, the language, the Hebrew calendar, the flag, the capital, all these things that are already in legislation, it just gives them a constitutional status they didn't previously have.
So you think that Israel can still be described as a democracy with this law in place, despite the effective downgrading of the rights of Israeli Arabs?
There is no effective, I'm sorry, I would have to dispute you that there's no effective downgrading of the rights of Israeli Arabs here whatsoever. These are existing laws which have been codified. They do not, in effect, affect the rights of Israeli Arabs in any way, shape, or form. Israel's been a Jewish state since 1948. It continues to be a Jewish state under this law. This does not affect the rights of Israeli Arabs anyway. The only effect it has is it slightly changes the role of Arabic. Instead of being an official language, it's now a language with a special status, but the law also says that the prior status given to Arabic language before the law was enacted still applies. So it's a little muddled, but the only effect it has is it still ensures that Arabic must be used for all state purposes for Arab citizens. So there's no reason whatsoever to think that this would affect the rights of Arab citizens.
Nevertheless, it has been greeted. We can see scenes from the Knesset when this law was passed now, greeted with fury among Israeli Arabs. MPs there calling the law a hate crime and racist. And it is generally recognised that this is going to put back any moves towards a peace deal. That two-state solution is now even further away.
I would explain that the Arab-Israeli reaction is based on the fact that they don't accept the definition of Israel as a Jewish state that's been in existence since 1948. They've been arguing that it should be a binational state, a Palestinian-Israeli state. But I don't see how it affects the two-state solution in any way, shape, or form. The two-state solution is based on the model two states for two peoples. That means a Jewish state and an Arab state. That was the model placed on the UN Petition Revolution in 1947. This is purely consistent with that. Israel will be the Jewish state, a future Palestinian state will be the Arab state selected at that time, and then two states for two people mean there will be a Palestinian state and a Jewish state of Israel. Obviously, the rights of minorities in both states have to be protected, but there is no reason this law should affect that.
And how much is this move going to promote Benjamin Netanyahu's chances in the next election?
It certainly would help him with his constituents. I think that this law has been sort of supported on the right side of Israeli politics for about a couple decades, some sort of law along those lines, so it would help him to some extent. But he was already doing fairly well in the polls anyway. I think his bigger problems are legal and rather than political, but I don't think it will hurt him.
Tzvi Fleischer, editor of the Australia-Israel Review. Thank you.
Thank you.
A new report has